Hello, friend. Richard Shaull here, founder and CEO of Unleashed. And I'm really excited that you're about to watch a conversation between myself and a dear friend, Jordan Mederich, the founder and CEO of DropFunnels. And in this conversation, a couple big takeaways I hope that you can implement right away in your company are, how do you actually attract A players to your company? Right? What's the art and science and some of the actual tactics and tips you need to recruit great talent? And then once you get them, how do you retain them, empower them, manage and lead them so that ultimately as a team, you're all rowing in the same direction towards your big impact vision? Please make sure to comment, like, subscribe on whatever platform you're watching this on. And I really hope that your questions get answered and you can implement some things right away. Enjoy.
For context, we're really going to be diving into how to build an A player team and to start to delegate some of the things that are going to help you to scale as an entrepreneur. Or even if someone's listening here and it's like, hey, I don't own a business, but I want to really set my time freedom. I want to get my time freedom back. We're going to dive into that. But for kind of context, do you mind giving an overview of how you got to the point where you're at today, all the way from you've done a lot of things and, we've been friends for a while here. And so I know the backstory, but I want people to know the context of how you've been able to create this incredible superpower of multiplying success. So how did you get to where you're at now?
Yeah, so it all starts basically when I was a baby. I'm just kidding. We won't start that far back. But in all truthfulness, I did grow up in a family of entrepreneurs and just caught that entrepreneurial bug. And in high school, started my first business. It kind of took off probably by accident more than anything else. From there, I kind of figured, hey, I'm unstoppable. I started a second business when I was 18 and then a third when I was 20. And I always joke that it was that business that almost killed me. We literally, were pouring millions of dollars into this company. I had angel investors. We hired a bunch of people and we did it all wrong. We did everything that you shouldn't do when it comes to building a team of A players. And honestly, man, I was at the end of myself. I literally remember the day I walked into my house. This was in my first year of marriage, avoided my wife and curled up in a fetal position in the corner in our spare room and cried out to God for help. We were like multiple six figures in the red. We had been defrauded by the state government. We were getting sued at the time. We had literally foremen, like people who were working for us, just quit, and not tell us on jobs that we had responsibilities and deadlines for. It was an absolute mess. And I really, remember just realizing in that moment that I wasn't even sure I had what it took, right, to build a business. I questioned whether I was even an entrepreneur. Maybe I just kind of made it all up and I got lucky the first couple of times. And it was really cool, though, thanks to some good mentors in my life, I realized that fundamentally what had gotten me there to a certain level of success was not what would get me to the next place. What got you here won't get you there, right, as they like to say. And at the root of it, I didn't actually know how to build teams, right? I knew I was good at sales. I was good at marketing. A lot of entrepreneurs are, but I wasn't actually practicing the leadership principles that I knew made the most successful people successful when it came to leading and empowering other people. And so that was kind of a turnaround moment in mindset for me. And as a result of that, plus some help from some other really smart people, we brought that business back into the black. I was able to successfully sell my shares to my partner because I wanted out. And that really allowed me to begin a new venture with a new perspective and co-founded a company from there. We took it from 2 people sitting in a living room to over 50 people on the org chart in 5 years, which was a really cool experience. And as a result of that, I'm so passionate about seeing entrepreneurs who have this incredible big impact vision in their heart actually see that be achieved, but helping them navigate this transition, right, from being an entrepreneur to actually being a CEO and a leader of a growing team. A business that can actually scale can't depend on you. And so that was kind of the fundamental lesson and what led me to where we are today and what we do with our company today.
So this is, for everyone listening here, going to be an extremely vulnerable conversation in the sense that even for myself in my companies, I've very much been like I'm going to do the sweat equity. I'm going to do the pushing. I can do so much myself. There really does come a point where you need to be moving from I'm the guy who can do it all to I need to multiply myself to create and fulfill the vision that I have in place. And I can tell you the number one problem in my business journey has been this exact problem. Making money is actually pretty simple. Keeping profits high is pretty simple once you dial in a few things. And creating funnels and ads and all those things are generally pretty simple things, but generating and cultivating A players and a culture, a winning culture around people has been really the number one issue and skill set to learn is how do you bring people into your organization to duplicate and multiply yourself. And actually to the point, full transparency for everyone here. I mean, I've made just unbelievable mistakes when it comes to hiring, whether it's hiring people who are bad fits, hiring people who you think are good fits, but they end up interviewing well, but not performing well, all the way to the point where in the last 90 days, I've had a team member vanish out of nowhere, stealing company money with no recourse at all. And that's like the worst case scenarios when you bring someone into an organization and you think everything's great, but really under the surface, it isn't. And so I think a lot of people avoid hiring people because of the potential for those types of issues and having to go into that. In fact, I have a friend who works as almost a C-level executive in Amazon, and they spend tens of millions of dollars on these teams who straight headhunt, their number one job, and they invest so heavily into finding and hiring and keeping A players with these massive multi-million-dollar hiring packages. And if Amazon is as big as they are, and Apple and Google, they're all doing the same thing with these huge they invest so heavily. This is not an unimportant thing for us to learn. So my first question to you is, do you feel bad for me? That's my number one question. And my second question is, what do we do when we start to dive into our first great hire? What's the first step that we need to take to start to create and cultivate an A player team?
Well, first of all, Jordan, I don't feel bad for you. I empathize with you.
Okay, good.
Because I've made the exact same silly, stupid hiring mistakes. And I've joked a lot that, even within our own company, like I don't oversee hiring for a reason because I would still probably screw it up, even though I'm kind of a recognized voice on this topic. It's somewhat a bit of an enigma, man, because I think entrepreneurship is built on this unshakable belief that you can do anything, which is so beautiful and also sometimes borderline delusional, because the truth is entrepreneurs aren't good at everything. And I think the minute we can start to be vulnerable, just like you did, Jordan, and admit like, hey, I have some constraints. I have some things I'm not good at. The minute we recognize that, that's the moment when we can actually step into freedom. When we can actually be like, okay, well, if I'm not good at that, what if I just focus on what I am truly good at and I'm vulnerable enough to ask for help or hire someone who is good at that? And I think that moment, every entrepreneur comes to that in their journey, and they either come to it they either learn from others' experience or you learn it through your own painful experience. And I know that was the case for me. So 100% I empathize. And I'm sure many people listening really appreciate that vulnerability, because like, where else do you talk about that, right? Like nowhere we never got ahead in entrepreneurship by saying I suck at something, right? You're constantly selling why you're crushing it. And so I think that vulnerability is honestly a really important start, right? You asked what would be the process to hiring the first A player. I think the best place to start is acknowledging that I'll never get to that big impact vision alone. And by alone, I don't just mean by hiring people and employees, because lots of people, like you said, have tried hiring people, bringing on employees. And that didn't necessarily fix the problem. Sometimes it made their life worse, right? It made things harder. It hurt their profit margins. I think what is important is to recognize at a human level that you have weaknesses. And there are people in the world who have strengths where you are weak. And there are people in the world who they will never reach their full potential and do what they want in life without yours. And that is the essence of the idea of team. I think, man, one of the hardest things about being an entrepreneur is you kind of have to have this lone wolf mentality. It's like, get out of my way. I'm going to go hunt. I'm going to make something happen. I'm almost an outsider. Everybody else thinks I'm crazy. And, again, you need some of that to get started. But when we talk about scaling, you have to be very careful staying in that lone wolf mindset, because what got you here, as I said before, won't get you there. And so I think, man, what I would say the first step, and maybe this isn't what you are looking for, is very meta. We can get into some tactics, but I think the first step truly is recognizing that the dream without the team is a fantasy, right? The dream without the team is a fantasy, right? Like, you're just not good at everything, and you're going to have to build a highly committed, highly convicted team of A players if you're a visionary entrepreneur who has a big vision that you want to see accomplished. It starts there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. A dream without the team is just a fantasy. I think we're going to start a swag store and put that on our first t-shirt, because frankly, it's not really all that fun to go it alone either, right? Being the lone wolf hunter out there means that maybe you're really great at sales, you're really great at marketing, but then if there's nothing on the back end, no support structure in place, frankly, your customers and clients are going to struggle to get results when they work with you. Your customer support could be suffering in a massive way. And I mean, I own a software company. We have about 20 team members all together, and between developers and level 1 support, level 2 support, fulfillment, client success, sales, marketing, agencies, it's a lot to manage all at once. And so it's been like drinking through a fire hose of getting things figured out as quickly as possible. But I think that's a critical decision to make, is like, I can't do it all alone, and that's okay. And by leveraging other people's time and skill set, that's how you set yourself free. I've never regretted hiring people on who can help me get my own time back so I can focus. So what would you say is let's say someone's a solopreneur, maybe they're doing pretty well. They're at anywhere from maybe 5K a month, 10K a month, 30K per month. They could run the ship by themselves if they wanted to, but they're like, I just really need to get to the next level. I have to get someone in. What's the first key hire that they need to make?
Well, I think there's a rules for this, and then there's exceptions, right? And so when we talk about the rules of hiring, some of this is a little bit dependent on your unique ability, right? What you love to do and are great at. Dan Sullivan calls it unique ability. I call it your superpower. What is it that you're truly great at? Because one of the things I watch entrepreneurs do who get stuck is they delegate things that they love to do and are great at. And they literally keep hold of things that they're not good at and don't love to do, right? Maybe because they're sensitive to the business, or it's a little bit out of fear or control. And that's a surefire path to burnout in my experience. So I think it starts with really getting awareness around, what do you love to do and are great at? And what do you not love to do and aren't great at? And there's a little exercise you can actually go look up. I think it's called the Eisenhower box, which is sort of a grid for decision making that kind of helps you think through, what I think the Eisenhower box is like: urgent and not important, not urgent. You guys have seen that before. Just literally, you can replace those. We have an exercise we take clients through with that, where it's like, do you love to do it? Are you great at it? And then it's like, some things you love to do and are great at, some things you don't love to do, but you're great at, some things you're great at, but you don't love to do, and vice versa. I'm sure I missed one of those 4, but I think you guys get the picture. I think once you have that awareness, you can start to really look at where your company is going and ask the question, who is the next key hire that can free up my time to focus on what I love to do and I'm great at? And typically, as an entrepreneur, the things that you love to do and are great at are going to be the things that drive growth for the business. So that's kind of more of like the art and the, customized approach. If you want sort of like a, brass tacks assessment from me, I would say there's a vast majority of businesses between 2 to 500K in revenue that could literally double if they hired a great executive admin, right? And I don't just mean like a VA overseas. I just did a whole training on this. I mean somebody who can do what I call the 2 job, or the 2 people, 1 job model. Okay. And that's where you have somebody come into your world who has the administrative superpower that you're lacking, and everything that you're responsible for, they take responsibility for, everything administrative, top to bottom, right? It's not 2 different jobs. This is what people get confused with that role. It's 2 people, 1 job. And when you get that right, it literally can double the entrepreneur's capacity. I've seen it over and over. I know so many people who are like, hey, I don't know what I would give an assistant to do. I can't. It's like, well, the real issue is that you're not really willing to to actually pay someone who you could actually trust to fully assimilate into every part of your world. And I'm even talking about personal stuff too, right? And then own everything administrative for you, top to bottom, and become the filter for everything in your world. Most people just aren't willing to give up that level of control. And as a result, they're missing out on potentially doubling their capacity. So I would say, go ahead.
You're talking about that administrative generalist who, like, literally your business, your life, they are infiltrated into everything that you do. Are we talking all the way down to laundry, to booking flights, to client success at the initial
100%.
steps?
I call those personal assists. So when we're building a success profile for an executive administrator, we get clear on what do personal assists look like. Because the reality is, if it's sucking your energy and your time and your bandwidth, that's creativity you're not able to bring to the business because of administrative functions in your world. Now, this person probably in the nowadays remote world may not be doing laundry for you, but anything in your world that they can automate, coordinate, maybe delegate for you, maybe get somebody else in your world to do that on like clockwork. They can do that personal assist. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, again, they maybe feel bad about that. Like it's like, oh, they're using business money to do to benefit them. But the thing is like, to the extent you have the energy, creativity, and fire in your belly to go build your business because you're freed up from the things that drain you, the business financially benefits. It's one of the best investments I see entrepreneurs make, especially in that earlier stage that fuels growth for them.
Yeah, that's huge. And it's funny that this has ended up being one of my final hires. It probably should have been the first. Was very much a personal assistant. I think we starve ourselves from that because we say, it's just my personal stuff, keep my business, separation of church and state, complete separation of numbers and all that stuff to keep things clean, or maybe tax fear or any of those things. Or maybe it is really that fear of airing out the dirty laundry, so to speak, right? Where, boy, that person, all the way up to having logins to your bank account, for that matter, could be something that helps to save your mental calories for something that's more important, right? So let me ask you this as a follow-up to that, then we'll move on to the kind of some of these other key hires. Number one, where do you find these people? And maybe what's a profile? Is this a young person? Is this an experienced person? And then two, how do you judge a pay scale for something of that magnitude?
Yeah. So where do you find these people? There's a lot of great ways to find good people. I can just tell you in our experience what has worked, right? For an entrepreneurial company, the most important asset you have in recruiting and finding great people is your vision, right? Your vision and your culture. Because let's be honest, as an entrepreneurial company, you have a lot against you. Okay. You don't have the great, cool benefit package. You don't have the notoriety. It's like, why would somebody who's really great come to work for you? And the answer is, you have to get into the psyche of that type of person and go, it typically comes down to contribution, the desire to grow and build something that's making an impact, or maybe resonance with the personal values that you have. And most entrepreneurs have never codified that and weaponized that in a way that can be shared in their recruiting process. And it's a huge under leveraged weapon, right? We even use the term weaponizing your vision because it sort of is our secret sauce when it comes to recruiting, right? We're able to pull very, very qualified people out of positions where they're happy currently, where they're making great money. Sometimes we've seen consistently over and over, people accept lower salaries to come work with our clients because of their vision and culture, right? And so I think the place to start is actually not, necessarily, all the tactical scientific stuff. We do all that too, and you need to do that well, but it's more of the art of how do we attract the people who will actually resonate with our culture and share it and be as convicted and committed to our vision as we will, because those kind of people aren't just coming to work for a paycheck, right? They're coming to work because they're passionate about what you're doing. And that level of commitment and trust can't be bought. It really can't. And so what I would say with that is so that's more the art side. Weaponize your vision, weaponize that culture, and infiltrate that, infuse that into every part of your hiring, recruiting, training, sourcing, placing, process. And that's what my very first recommendation would be. Don't go find these people, attract them, pull them out of the woodwork with that compelling weaponized vision. And then more on the science side, people always ask me like, well, where should we post, right? Should we post on Indeed? Should we use ZipRecruiter? Should we do this? And my answer is like, from a science side, it's like every available place that you can. So this is one of the things, right, where we use an aggregator and a syndicator for this stuff. But I would say, as many different pipelines as you can open up, it's amazing what happens in your hiring processes when you're operating from a place of abundance. So, typically we want to literally screen hundreds of applicants to find one. And then we have a very intense 16-step filtering and scientific process to filter down to only the very best. But we need to have abundance from a hiring perspective. We need to attract the right kind of people in the first place. And then we need a scientific process to filter a high volume of candidates down to the very best. That's probably as simply as I can put it.
And what's interesting for our team, almost everyone, I would say 9 out of 10 people have come from, maybe they were previous clients, maybe they were users or customers in the past, and they got so endowed and indoctrinated. They said, I not only love buying this, I would love to work in that environment, in that culture. And that's one of our biggest strengths for us, especially, is that people just want to be in our world. They want to have more fun, even if it means they want to create an impact and a legacy for themselves. But they're willing to forego some massive corporate salary to be able to work from home, have more time freedom, and do more cool things. So it's amazing how salaries and income is not actually a primary driver for most people. And if it is, they're probably an entrepreneur, and they're probably going to go start their own thing and hustle and go make that happen. In which case, I guess you have to screen that. So that's an interesting question. How do you define when you meet someone who is so motivated by money and that's their main thing? It's like they just want mass salaries. Is that kind of an X mark for you? Is that a red flag?
So let me make a distinction too, that it's like, we want our team to be wealthy, right? And I think sometimes in entrepreneurial culture, there's a little bit of this kind of like, are you one of us, or are you, I don't know how else to say it, one of the sheep, one of the peons. And I just don't buy into that. I think there's just different types of people, and we all need each other, right? We have very different functions, but we need each other. So, for us, we want our team to win. We're a huge fan of building, at least long-term with our clients, building profit sharing models into their thing. So you win, your team wins, everybody wins. And that would be a whole conversation in and of itself about how to do that right and do it in the right timing for your company, because it's not a right fit for every company and every season. Goal number one is to be profitable, right? Which some businesses aren't even that profitable. But that being said, I think that it's not that high performers don't want to make a lot of money, or at least comparative to their peers, make more money than their peers, right? It's that the value system that they have is contribution first, growth first, and by contributing and growing to their full potential, they know they will make great money, great income, right? Versus a entitlement mentality, which says, I just want to make as much money as possible right now. Somebody who's an A player, their ethos is, I want to become the best version of myself and make a significant impact using my skills where I am. And I know that I will perform so well that I'll be compensated in accordance with that because of the value that I bring. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I love that. You're right. You could probably cover this in a month-long training. It would take that long to cover all these individual aspects. So I know we're talking high level here, but when it comes to saying, okay, yes, I've decided that I need an A-player leadership team. Yes, I'm willing to go anywhere to go get that and to start to build a culture that invigorates that. Let's talk about that from a culture perspective. What are the key metrics that a leader needs to bring into an organization to facilitate a culture that people love to be around? Are we talking about, hey, end of month goal vision boards and parties and pizza and gamification? Is it that far down the spectrum, or is it, hey, we're here to help develop the best version of yourself and that's enough? Or is it in the middle? How do we develop what a strong culture is all about?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the first step, and this might seem sort of tepid to some, is truly defining your culture and your vision. A lot of entrepreneurs I talk to, they can tell me about their vision. But when I ask them, where is that documented? They don't have an answer. It's just sort of, we have some copy on our website, blah, 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 blah. And I just can tell that as a result of that, their system and method for building a strong culture is just them talking. It's not a scalable model for that.
You're telling me that putting a mission statement on a poster in my room isn't a valid way to communicate the vision and mission?
Yeah, but it's just incomplete. It's incomplete. And I think, again, like, one of the things that has really surprised me, the more I network and meet, and I'm sure you've realized this with people who are very, very successful, is when you look at their companies, they're borderline obsessed with this stuff, with their purpose, their vision, the values and culture that they have. It's an obsession for them. Whereas for a lot of entrepreneurs, the obsession is growth, right? For growth's sake. I think for a lot of the very best, the obsession is becoming the best. And that's not about just revenue growth. It's about truly building a world-class organization, not just a money machine. They want to build a world-class organization. And so world-class organizations take attention to this stuff. They not only document it, they consistently work on it, refine it, sharpen it, hone it, and communicate it so that it almost, I don't know how else to say this. I've talked about this multiple times, and every time I share it, people are like, yeah, don't do that. But I almost want to do a talk or something called cult-like culture. Because if you study cults and then you study great organizations, there's really interesting comparisons where it really is almost like people have drank the Kool-Aid. They're indoctrinated, but it's because the leaders are so consistent at creating clarity and then communicating it from a standpoint of vision, mission, and values. And so the thing I would give somebody, if you're looking for a practical on that, what could you do, is really just start by defining what are the core values and cultural habits that I want my people to embody. And both of those are very important, right?
Can you give us like an example of that? I think that helped.
Yeah. So it's funny. I was just walking. I did a final interview today with somebody we're adding to our team. And literally I pull up this document that has our core values, an explanation of those core values, and the cultural habit that accompanies that value. And just an example of one, right? Just a really simple one for us is we're high performing, right? So one of our values is we're high performing. And then I literally tell them what I mean by high performing. And the cultural habit for that is a practice within our culture of what we call reading your daily IV. And we literally have everyone in our organization create a identity and vision document, who they are and where they're headed, and then the habits that they are going to commit to be that person and advance towards that vision. We have a template for it. It's part of their onboarding process that they create it. And then their leader and manager is actually holding them accountable to those habits that they committed to show up as high performing. And like literally that's part of their quarterly performance review. It's like, hey man, how are you doing on those habits? And then what's so cool is the leader is leading them through the lens of who they want to be and what they see. And so it's very much like you're not just managing and going, well, you need to show up to meetings on time. It's like, hey man, in your daily IV, you say you're the kind of person that everyone on our team can count on. And it doesn't demonstrate that when you show up to a meeting 3 minutes late. Right. And that's where those leadership and accountability conversations become really real. You're not being an a-hole to them, right? You're holding them accountable to who they said they wanted to be. And so that's just an example. Like every organization, this is what I mean when I say that wouldn't be right for every organization, but that's right for us. And we've taken time to not only craft our values, but what are the specific habits that embody those values that we're going to hold our team accountable for. And then really as a leader, the second thing I would say is create and communicate that stuff. And then when you see something, say something. So one of my favorite quotes in leadership is what gets celebrated gets repeated. So my question is, what systems do you have in place within your organization to catch people red-handed in the act of doing something right?
Ooh, say it again for the cheap seats, bro. This is huge. It's not because it's easy to do that for like sales. Like, hey, sales guys, go ring the bell. Tell us what you did, and we're gonna be like, woohoo, generate, made revenue or whatever. But say that again. I think this is critical before we shift gears here to focus on celebrating even the non-revenue generating activities and the non-marketing based growth activities.
100%. And those things can be measurable, or sometimes they can be cultural, like we talked about in this thing. But what gets celebrated gets repeated. So whatever you want to happen within your culture, simply build systems and develop methods within your organization of recognizing when your people have done something right and celebrate the heck out of it. Because I can guarantee you, you have good people and you celebrate the heck out of them doing the right things, they will repeat those right things.
Man, and it's so funny you mentioned that. Just the other day, my chief tech officer was celebrating someone who was on the team, and I feel like this is a learning point for me too, is to celebrate non-revenue or non-benchmark, non-quantitative, more qualitative qualities, to celebrate that. And what he did, and it's a perfect example of that. He said, Ernest is his name. He said, and Ernest is not exactly like a coder or any of those things, but he's on our support team. He's actually employee number 1 at DropFunnels. And he was celebrating the fact, he's like, hey, he's actually dived deep into like learning how to figure out this issue from a technical perspective, and was like celebrating that. And you see that person start to light up, and it's funny, even with my developers who are all over the world, when I come in there from an attitude and perspective of, guys, like, here's where we're headed, and huge love and congrats on what you guys have done over these last 2 weeks and whatnot, they all perk up and they all look forward to those meetings, those events. They look forward to being involved in the community and sharing more of their wins, because it does get celebrated. So I think for me, that's a nail on the head type of moment, which I think is huge.
Well, let me give you another example of this just quickly for the people in the cheap seats, as you said, because I think stuff stays theoretical for so many leaders. Another one of our cultural habits is giving and receiving feedback, right? Which, by the way, I think is one of the most important cultural habits for any high performing team. So you're welcome to steal that one. I remember literally about 6 months ago in our business, I always tell this story when I talk about this core value. And by the way, I give like a speech about our core values every quarter. And then my team compiles for me a list of people we've caught red-handed doing these values, and we celebrate them publicly and give them gifts, right? So just to even give you guys an example of this, we do this all the time ad hoc. And then we've also systemized it where it just is happening on a regular basis. And those moments are so powerful and people are crying. But just to give you like the example, giving and receiving feedback, how valuable this is from a business perspective, that cultural habit, because we built it in. I can say without a doubt that one of the most significant pivots that has yielded more revenue for us than anything else we've ever done as a company in sales and marketing happened because a person in operations gave feedback within our organization. We had someone in the trenches with our clients who spotted an issue with how we were doing things and how we were making our offer, and had the courage to bring it to our leadership team and go, you know what, guys, I think the way we're doing this is not the right way. And this is what I'm hearing from our clients. And this is what I'm seeing with our clients. And I think we need to consider this. And that one piece of feedback, after some brainstorming by our leadership team and implementation, I believe was a massive breakthrough in our sales and advertising. And I know I think it's one of the snowballs that will most affect our ability to achieve our vision over the next 10 years of almost anything I've seen over the last year. That is the power of building this into your culture. Because how many other revenue producing breakthroughs, insights, optimizations are locked up inside of your boots on the ground people, because you have not built a culture where they feel empowered or permission to give feedback.
Yeah, fear-based culture.
Yeah.
Instead of permission-based. Boy, that's deep. I want to shift gears here slightly to the other side of the pendulum, which no one likes to talk about, but here on the Jordo Show, we're about asking the hard questions. Let's talk about firing. I love the phrase. I think it was Dave Ramsey who said, hire slowly and fire quickly. And maybe that's true and maybe it's not, but let's talk about letting people go with grace, which I think is pretty critical. I've got some thoughts to share too on what we've done, but how do we fire people well?
Yeah, so I hate to even answer this question this way, but the first goal is to not have to as much as humanly possible by making sure you follow the first piece of advice, which is hire slow, right? And the reason most entrepreneurs have so many issues with firing and retention, I mean, the book by Jeff Smart, who says that 80% of all hires are mishires. I mean, it's incredible. And there is literally documentable evidence that there is no expense more significant to a business that will impair its growth than having to refill key roles, having to fire and rehire. So like, if you want to drive growth for your business, get really good at just hiring the right people and then empowering and developing the heck out of them so you don't have to fire them. Like, I can't stress that enough, right? Because there's some people who are trying to build systems around this and they're trying to SOP the heck out of their organization. And they're really about like performance metrics and standards and benchmarks and blah, 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 and all this stuff. And it's like, if you don't meet the bar, you're fired, you're fired. Not imitating anyone there. But at the end of the day, there's still significant expense, slowed momentum, and honestly, loss of morale every time that happens poorly within an organization. So the key is to have to do that as little as possible. Retention is one of the greatest drivers of profitability, not client retention, team retention at scale. And so hire the right people, develop the heck out of them, lead them well, and get them as much clarity as possible so that they can win and you can retain them. Okay, what happens when you do all of that well, and then there's the hopefully small percentage point amount of firing that actually has to take place? I'm not talking about transition where somebody goes, hey, I want to do something else. Those conversations are easy to have. Are you sure this is what you want? We love you. We believe in you. Hey, we have a full bench as a company of people who are waiting at the seams to come on to our company, right? Hopefully that's the case as a CEO, right? If you're doing the vision stuff we talked about earlier. If you actually have to fire someone, the first thing I would say is this all starts with, in my opinion, having a clear process for documenting what success is and knowing when someone is off track, and then having very clear upfront conversations about what has to change for them to be back on track. And when those things aren't hit, most of the time, if you do that really, really well, people will leave on their own. I'm dead serious, right? Like it's the fact that we don't do that well that we have to have these weird, awkward hiring things. Like the great organizations I found have such high standards internally, and they're so driven and motivated. They literally just eject people who are low performers. They don't even have to fire them. The people just leave because they know that they can't keep up. Yeah. They know that they can't stay within that culture if they can't hit the marks are so clear. What success is so clear. And they just go, I can't do that. I got to go find somewhere else, right? I got to go somewhere else where I can win. And we go, we want you to win too. It's just not here. Go win somewhere else. So I can give you the tactical conversation for kind of the cleanup work, but that's what I would say is like, the first thing is getting really clear on what the success profile is for the roles. What are their do they fit your culture, right? And we just have this simple ranking system where it's 1 through 3, right? 1 is they don't exemplify that core value and cultural habit most of the time. 2 is sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. 3 is more often than not they do, right? Anytime we do a performance review with a team member, anything that's a 2 is an issue that we're going to talk through and put into their development plan and get clear around what needs to happen. The same is true with their responsibilities. They're crushing it. That's a 3. A 2, sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. A 1, they're not crushing it. They're not winning right now on that responsibility. Every role within the success profile has measurables, at least one measurable that they're accounting for. Are they hitting their measurable? If not, why? Let's lean into that. And in a performance a high performing culture where that stuff is consistently put in front of them, it's super clear, and they're expected to perform, most people will either eject themselves, or when you have that hard conversation, they get it. You just sit down with them and you go, hey man, it doesn't seem like you're winning right now. Do you feel like you're winning? No, I don't feel like I'm winning. Well, man, let's help you find somewhere where you can win.
And I think that was my addendum to that, which I think you said far more succinctly, is that when I bring someone into my organization, if I have to let them go, if they don't eject themselves and I have to let them go because of like poor performance and standards, one of the most important things I think, and I think it was Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank who said this, right? He said, you brought them into the organization and it's your job to help exit them out with exit them well, finding something else for them to do, right? Finding another job or another opportunity for them. But I want to wrap up with this thought and this question, because I think tactically speaking, it's a critical thing. Is before we started recording, we started talking about this big fight, this conflict. And you and I are on opposite butting sides of the spectrum between hiring contractors versus true employees versus annual salaries, benefits package, that type of corporate structure, versus a more temporary project-based, shorter term perspective for teams. So which do you feel like how do you diagnose what's right for each different type of business model?
Yeah. So here's what I would say. I'm not in any way opposed, especially if a business is smaller or younger, going the 1099 route, right? There's less complexity, but I think the most important thing for entrepreneurs to understand is there's a big difference between tax designation, right? How somebody pays their taxes at the end of the year, and whether or not they have an all-in mindset. Okay. I don't care if legally you have to call someone a contractor, but is someone as convicted and committed to your vision as you are? And they are actually someone you can hold accountable to your culture and to what success looks like here. And if you're setting the expectation that somebody is a contractor, that gets very, very difficult. If you're bringing people in, regardless of how their pay stub looks, and you set that expectation, you can hold them accountable to the culture, the vision, and what success looks like for that role. And I think that's the most important thing. I will say, as an organization scales, I think world-class organizations have employees for a reason, because for as much, so-called complexity as that injects, there are benefits. And depending on the state you live in and certain things, there's also a lot of legal ramifications that I'm not fully qualified to talk about, to trying to do the contractor model when somebody is truthfully an employee. So, in our context, almost everyone other than salespeople is a full-time W-2 employee. And, for us, we've just found that allows us to get, when we go to market, the highest caliber of people who have sometimes the right archetype and the right mindset and the right expectation. And then we just develop the heck out of those people. We breed them to think and live entrepreneurially and not just rest on their laurels and get a paycheck. Nobody who comes in our culture has that, but always be pushing to drive business value, because they know if we profit, they're going to benefit.
Boy, this was we clearly need to do an even deeper dive into this subject, because it's so broad and so deep and so wide all at the same time. But I want to make sure that people can connect with you if they feel like they really just want help developing these teams. Where can people find more about you and what you guys do?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want, you can search the Unleashed CEO or Unleashed CEO show on YouTube. You can also just go to unleashed.ceo. There's no .com. People ask all the time. Just type in unleashed.ceo. That'll take you to our website where you can learn a little bit about us and what we do. Again, that's unleashed.ceo. And would love to, any entrepreneur who's a visionary and knows that they need the team to achieve the dream, man, it would be our honor just to advise and consult and see if it's a fit for us to help you build that leadership team. So thanks for that invite, Jordo. And this was an amazing conversation. I'm excited for the next one.
Appreciate you, Richard, for being here, man. You're making a big impact in the world. And I think if anyone employs any one of these individual strategies here, they're going to see massive impact in the growth in their mission. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, you're welcome.